Hi, I'm David Harmon with RE/MAX Whatcom County. I'm with my partner Keith Cook, and we just finished up a series on title and title insurance. And we have Kristin Hunt with us with Chicago Title Insurance, and she's going to dive into escrow and actually what is escrow.
Yeah, how would you best describe it? We get the question quite a bit. Someone asks you, what is escrow in a real estate transaction?
Right. So a lot of people will be like, you're like, your house is in escrow. And they're like, cool, where is that?
Right.
Okay, so what the real answer
what state is escrow?
Cool, that's awesome. I'm in escrow, don't know what it is. What the real answer to that is escrow is a neutral third party. They're Switzerland, Canada. I think they're both pretty neutral, as I've described before. But they will handle all the documentation within the transaction. So the purchase and sale comes to us. The loan documents from the lender come to us. We work them up, handle the signings. We also handle all the money. We don't actually keep cash on hand, though. Let me make that clear. No cash. So we handle all the money of the transaction. So, and take care of the debits and the credits, paying off different things that need to be paid off from the seller to the buyer in order to ensure free and clear title, too. Mm-hmm. So we take care of the signing. We take care of all that stuff.
That's a pretty good answer.
Is that a pretty good answer? Is there more that you think might be needed? How do you describe it, Keith?
I'm not as detailed.
Oh, okay.
So my answer is, if I haven't said it before, Chicago Title, best one out there. They work with the title company and their escrow division. Now, the escrow, what I would say, is independent, which is different. But so I say escrow. So here's the answer. Escrow is an independent third party that will collect the deed from the seller, the cash from the buyer, and do all their little magic stuff and pay all the bills and stuff. And then at closing, simultaneously deliver the buyer the deed or the title and the cash to the seller.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, in a nutshell, that's exactly what we do.
Dave agrees with me.
Right.
Dave
100%.
To my left. Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm still trying to figure out how to spell escrow. So.
ESCROW, escrow.
So we had this. It's a lot bigger job, and it's way more important than what we're just kind of glossing over right here.
Absolutely.
So there's so much with it, and so just trying to get into not everything, but just enough to be dangerous and give you a better understanding of what's going to go on here, because there's a lot of documents that escrow has to deal with the title report and the loan documents and just the deeding, and then if you have attorneys or wills or estates or LLCs, or there's a lot that kind of goes on with
a lot of moving
escrow.
Parts.
So let's just dig into it, and let's just say, if you have questions, again, your website will be on here and all of your more information stuff. And we could call us too, but you'll be the expert on answering these questions. So question being, what does the buyer pay for on escrow?
So on escrow specifically, I mean, obviously we take care of a lot of the different things per the purchase and sale agreement. And so typically what the buyer is paying for within the transaction as a whole, when it comes to us and closing, the buyer is going to be paying for the lender's title insurance policy. They also pay for half the escrow fee. The seller pays for the other half. And the buyer is mostly going to be paying for a lot of their lender fees. So a lot of what the lender fees, if they're getting a loan or what have you, if they're not getting a loan, the buyer is paying all cash. They do not need to pay for a title insurance policy. The seller would pay for that. Obviously they're going to be paying, if they put in their contract, they're paying for the inspection, they would take care of that at the time with you guys. We don't really get involved in that portion. And they would be paying for their homeowner's policy usually at that time. So a lot of that's wrapped into
their homeowners, like physical, assuming it's a house.
Physical
house insurance,
or condo insurance or building insurance, so to speak, at that time. If there's any mobile notary fees that could take place, but some places do RON, which is remote online notarization now. So it really just depends on where the client's located. At our office in our local area, we can definitely do that.
It's a lot of work, and so it is. So I would think it's important once you start getting information from escrow to be stay in touch with them as much as possible from a buyer standpoint, because they may not have all of your information. So
yeah. So what's really important is if escrow reaches out in any way, shape, or form to say the buyer, to the seller, anything along those lines, it's really make sure you reach back out to us. You know, we do send different things out to get more information from the buyer and the seller that we have to get. That's a little more secured.
Well, it is. Okay, so what does the seller pay for?
The seller is going to be paying for the buyer's homeowner's policy. So they will be paying for that. They are also going to be paying for the escrow fee. They split that buyer seller. They're also going to be paying the real estate excise tax. So that's like real estate sales tax in the state of Washington. Portion goes to the county, portion goes to the state. They are going to be paying off, say if they have a mortgage, they're paying that off at the time of closing. We're ordering payoffs before closing to get the exact amount of what's owed. Also, any utilities that are lienable, water, sewer, garbage, that's something that we do pay off to current for the new owners as well, so that there's no liens. Any reconveyance fees. So a reconveyance fee is if you have a mortgage on the property and it needs to get reconveyed, so kind of like closed out, right? So there is a reconveyance fee for that. Any tax prorations. So anything in regards to paying it to current, or maybe getting a credit back or something along those lines. I know a lot of people have it within their mortgage, but sometimes it's not due at the right, it's a confusing little thing for people sometimes, as far as that's not the exact time of when it goes. Maybe homeowners association dues, we pay those to current. Maybe sometimes there's even like a transfer fee. Sometimes that can be paid by the buyer or the seller. Any assessments that they might have, but that's also dictated on the purchase and sale agreement. Right. We don't assume anything. It has to be, they have to tell us to do that. So it's on there. And if there's delinquent taxes or anything like that, that's obviously going to be paid to current, so we can get that free and clear title to the next party. Notary fees, if it's applicable, if they're out of town or something like that, because we do have to have those wedding signatures back typically. So yeah.
No, and it's kind of at the end.
Commission.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I forgot your favorite part.
Right. Well, the buyers can pay commission.
The buyers can pay commission too. Yeah.
I'm really fond of bonuses, so I'm really So what we get and then some extras. But what the cool part at escrow? So the date of settlement, the settlement date, you'll have a preliminary and then a final, but it's a whole like Excel spreadsheet that shows like where every cent goes. And when we got our broker's licenses, we had to go through and do some of these mock closings and prorate everything down to like someone, the taxes are $10,000 a year and you close on day 321. Who pays how much part of the tax? Is it the day before, the day after? And dealing with utility companies sometimes with payment or what. There's just a lot to deal with. Getting in touch with the lenders to make sure that if there's a new lender coming in, what are all their fees from the buyer? The seller going out, they could still have fees too to say, all right, that loan's paid off. They're going to charge you after you've been paying them forever to remove that from the loan or from the title. So but that's your guys' job. Thank goodness it's not us, because
there's a lot of moving pieces within escrow. And those escrow officers, man, do you know that the LPO, they have their LPO license, limited practice officer license, which a lot of people are like, what? It's like a 17% pass rate.
Wow,
it's crazy. And so what essentially they have to pass is the Washington State bar for the real estate portion.
Right,
is essentially what they're tested on, and so. It allows them to do specific documents and create these specific documents that is used within the transaction. But they're not an attorney and cannot practice law.
No, and escrow is kind of the common glue, I think, that both works with the buyer and the seller, and escrow's in touch with the buyer and the seller, getting documents from both parties.
Absolutely.
And it was actually kind of almost the last face you would see in some aspects of the transaction, because usually when you meet with escrow, if you're doing it in person, you're meeting with them the last day or two of the sale, and and then there you go. The transaction's over. So
yeah, and I would say probably as far as within the transaction itself, the portion of our company who the buyers and sellers are going to speak with the most is someone within our escrow department. Is typically what I'm going to say. Is usually one of the assistants, sometimes the escrow officer. Those are the ones that they'll talk to the most.
Right.
So as soon as we get that purchase and sale in the door, that's when, which is the contract to buy or sell real estate. That's when we start the conversation with escrow. Really.
When we got this little trick we like to do when we write a purchase and sale agreement, and you might want to share it or not, but there's a little line on there that says title company, and we put Chicago Title on there to make sure they get to work with you.
We appreciate that.
And it really is the two parts with the title company and the escrow, and they do work. They're not independent, but they work in connection with each other because there's some things that escrow has to do to help clear title. And so it's like, say there's the seller wants to sell the property. They still have a loan on it.
Yep.
In order for the new buyer to buy it and their loan to go on, that has to be cleared. Well, guess who gets to do that? Escrow gets to take all the documents. It's pretty cool. It's making sure it's recorded, that it's been recorded, that it's been paid off, which is super important for the buyer to make sure that their loan's in first position, and for the seller to make sure that it's like, hey, we just paid this mortgage off, and someone shows it, no, you're still owe us money. So
yeah.
You don't
so
want to be
we
in
take
that
care
boat.
of all that. One of the biggest things that escrow does is they're ordering the payoffs from different departments, different places. And like you said, title and escrow work together. We are essentially like a marriage. It's two different departments with totally different personalities, and escrow finders. And then these guys are checking to see what payoffs and who actually has the ability to sign as well. So that's always important.
We're going through your website. You got a lot of stuff on your website about this stuff.
We have a bunch of different educational pieces for sure.
This escrow flow chart's pretty cool.
We do have a good escrow flow chart. Those
we'll
are
put that
usually
up
in
online.
Our buyer seller guides. Yeah. So this is pretty good. Once they do the contract with their agent.
Where I think and that's really where it comes down to, because I know Keith and I are both the same way. Once we have a buyer or a seller and we get mutual acceptance on a purchase sale agreement, and we're moving forward, and we turn those documents into Chicago Title, we make sure that we express to the buyer or the seller that quickly they're going to be reaching out and asking for things. So we're actually introducing that third person to that third party to the relationship, and emphasizing how important it is to cooperate and get that information that they're requesting back, because it's critical to keep things moving.
We always appreciate when agents and stuff kind of give a heads up of what to expect. That's always so helpful for us. So after we receive the purchase and sale agreement, we open that order, and then next is the buyer doing their earnest money deposit. We don't hound them for the check, right? Like we're not someone that's like, oh, it's day 4, you're day 3. We want the agents to nip at those heels.
That's our job, absolutely.
You nip at those heels a little bit.
Because someone could be out of contract if you don't turn it in on time.
Could be. So our
avoidable.
Our whole thing too is some people don't realize that we actually do deposit those checks. And earnest money can come in different forms. It could be a personal check, a cashier's check, a wire transfer. However, if you are an international buyer and do not have a U.S. bank account, that can only be a wire transfer. And note that if you are trying to do a quick close, or having something be like, payable to the seller upon, the earnest money be payable to the seller, those kinds of things will need to be a cashier's check or a wire, because if we have to do that, there's a wait period, right? So think about that. So,
and if it could be, even with wires, wire extra. We just had one where someone didn't wire enough, and I had to zip them down $20.
Was it from a different country or here?
Well, that's a technical question.
Because sometimes,
they were Canadian.
Okay, our friends to the north. So when it passes through the Federal Reserve, at each Federal Reserve, there's a little bit taken out.
They reserve some of the money.
They do. So I always say pad that a little bit. I've seen that happen a little bit, and more than it should. But any international,
Right.
not just Canada. And sometimes it passes through multiple Federal Reserves. So imagine that padding.
Yeah.
Well, just reviewing this flow chart again, I
Mhm.
think looking at this, and we'll put it up there so they can look at.
Yeah, that's great.
That kind of goes through the whole process, start to finish.
Absolutely.
I think to go what's there. It's kind of like day in the life of what's going on with a property.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the good things for you guys to know as clients, buyers or sellers, is that you guys will receive a start in here email. It says start safe on the thing, but it's start in here email from our escrow team. What that's going to be is it's going to ask different questions, right? And it's not because we're trying to be nosy. We're asking if you're married because not because, of any other reason, but for the fact that in Washington State, community property is really strong.
Right.
So are you married? Are you divorced? Have you rented any portion of the property? All these are little tips and tricks for us to know how to structure the paperwork.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Are you a U.S. citizen? If you're a buyer, are you getting a loan for the property?
What's your
Who's
favorite
the lender? What's your favorite color?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dave writes an offer on something. Of course, he gets it accepted because that's the kind of guy Dave is, right? So when he's representing the buyer, because he already would have had title representing the seller, and he represents sellers too. Then he sends you the purchase and sale agreement. Then what happens?
So we receive the purchase and sale agreement. We open the order. We contact any of the agents if we need more contact information regarding the purchase and sale. Once the order's open, we're hoping we get that earnest money pretty soon. Sometimes it comes with the contract. Sometimes it doesn't.
Dave's good about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's Keith and I both are, as we're working with buyers or sellers, we're definitely letting them know that at the point of mutual acceptance, there's going to be a third party involved. And once they have that earnest money, whether they deposit it or they have us deposit it at Chicago Title, that's kind of the beginning steps. And then we inform them that that's the beginning process to working with Chicago Title or your title and escrow company and having that communication.
Absolutely. So,
and it's good for us to know that you got a couple bucks at least to put a deposit down.
Right.
So, but
it's showing that you're
Wow,
earnest
right.
in
Wow.
buying the property.
they have some money.
So, and by the way, we do not take suitcases of cash.
Right.
I just want you to know we do
Dang
not
it.
take suitcases of cash.
No.
Would look cool, but we don't. So different ways that you can do earnest money. Obviously, it's dictated within your contract of how that earnest money should be deposited to us. However, we do accept wire transfer. Always call before you wire. We will send you instructions, and we never change our wiring instructions. We accept cashier's checks from a U.S. bank account only. And we will accept personal checks from a U.S. bank account only. Keep in mind, if it's a very quick close, we will want a wire transfer or a cashier's check. And if it's a longer close, a personal check is just fine. But
Can you do a mobile one with a check?
yes, so you could do a mobile earnest money deposit with a check, and that will come from when you receive the Start Safe email from us. That will be one of the things in there that also has wire instructions in that Start Safe email as well. It's a very secure portal. But we're going to ask you some questions too. We're going to ask the clients questions. So yes, mobile earnest money. If you've got a smartphone, we can help you walk through that. But that's one of the options on there. But we're primarily going to be asking you some questions. Buyer has a different set of questions than a seller. It's a very secure portal where you can put that information in. It might talk about, marital status, full names, where would you live? It's always important.
It's wild how this stuff is all electronically nowadays. So
Absolutely,
it does make sense. So, and it makes sense. You guys are trying to make sure there's no thievery going on. So there's a lot of added steps or precaution, just making sure, like with how you guys, call before you wire, because people are trying.
It's very important. Yeah,
people try to trick you. People find a sale's going on somehow, and there are some tricksters out there.
Yeah, definitely. And any way of how the questions get answered, it's how we prepare our documents, right? Like, different things are the rents, all that kind of stuff.
On your handy escrow flow chart, which I think is really cool, we'll put up
Very
there.
cool.
So number 1.
We receive the contract, the purchase and sale agreement. Number 2 is going to be getting that earnest money deposited in.
Right.
Dun, dun, dun.
3.
Number 3 is that we review the contract and the conditions and requirements for closing, such as, dates, people's names, all that kind of stuff. Number 4, buyer and seller receive and complete the start in here email, which comes from our escrow department, that portal. Number 5, escrow establishes communication with the buyer's lender, if there is one. Sometimes it's cash, right? 6, escrow orders and reviews the preliminary title. Excuse me. Number 7, escrow delivers the preliminary title to all parties for review. Number 8, we're reviewing the title report, including ownership information, what needs to get paid off, property taxes, judgments, utilities if requested. We confirm the closing date with all parties, and we prepare the documents after the loan documents arrive from the lender, as well as we actually get the closing disclosure information out to said lender. Number 10 is escrow schedules appointments for buyer and seller to sign documents.
Okay, we only got 5 to go.
Here's the thing, we only do that once we have the documents from the lender. So loan documents are returned to the lender, reviewed and approved. Buyer deposits required funds to escrow. So a lot of people do that with their signing appointment, or they can wire them in.
And it's assuming this would be the time if you're selling and you don't have you're short a little bit, you'd need to get it in the same time frame.
Absolutely.
So 12B?
12B.
Okay.
If you are short, which we're not seeing a lot of people coming up short, but if you are short, that is correct. Sometimes, too, people will take the money and transfer it to a purchase. So the seller will become a buyer and transfer it to that purchase. So we can do that. 13, lender approves the signed loan documents and allows us to record and sends us the closing funds. So we get the funds to close from the lender. Number 14, documents are recorded in the county recorder's office and escrow is closed. So we do that digitally now, with a few exceptions to that.
And that's only the $5 extra fee, right?
That's the $5 technology fee on the real estate excise tax affidavit.
It's good
that
stuff.
Keith is talking about. So then 15, escrow is going to disperse the funds. We're going to pay off who needs to be paid off, cut all the checks, cut the checks to the seller, all that fun stuff. Number 16, the buyer will receive the keys from the real estate agent. And you know what? We never know what time those keys are going to be available. We get asked probably majority of the signings. And it's really important for clients to know that signing and closing is not the same thing.
Or signing, closing, and possession. So there's really three
things. So yeah, when people are coming in to sign documents, that is not when the house is closed. When it's recorded at the courthouse.
Buyers are ready to get in there and start.
Yeah, when it actually is closed. So once we have those recording numbers.
Right. Now, so this whole flow chart, very handy for purchase and sale agreement, arm's length transaction, buyer seller. If it's going to be something different from that, like you sometimes might see you for doing a home equity line of credit or signing the papers there, might be a little bit different, but similar.
Yeah, it's similar, but a little bit different as well. If you're doing a refinance or a HELOC, same, but different. Yeah, totally.
So, Kirsten, is there something that clients can do to make it more smooth through the whole process?
Absolutely. There's a few different things. Making sure that they complete and return all their forms to us as soon as possible, the emails. If we're asking for different documents, like say trust or LLC agreements, that as well. Making sure that they get everything to their lender on time. That definitely helps. Also, if your clients are going to be out of state, maybe they don't live out of state, but they're going to be traveling on vacation. We need to know that as soon as advance as we can, because there's a couple different options that we can do, depending on what that transaction looks like. So, and are they out of the country? Do they live out of the country? We'll definitely need to know that in advance as well, and kind of set things up from there. Are they going to be coming to us, or do they need to sign where they're at?
Oh, and it can be a nightmare because there's different notary qualifications for the United States, and some of the stuff you have to go to consulates or try to
Absolutely
get stuff. So if you're going to be out of country, you definitely want to know ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely. So that's always really important. Also, if maybe there is a pending divorce, or maybe they're going to get married during the time that the house is pending. We've had that too. And then they're married when they come in to sign, and it's like, well, we need to change some things up a little bit.
Yeah, they do.
Right? So definitely stuff like that. If we also need to know too, it's kind of a one that we don't really talk about too much, but is there any abuse in the relationship? Maybe that's a husband and wife, or whatever, wife and whatever. But if there is ever any abuse, it's always important to let us know too, because one, we're going to try and protect people, making sure that they don't come at the same time, making sure that, that it's not like, people are signing under duress, right? Like, right. We need to make sure that happens and everyone's safe. That's
a nice positive note. But then also if there's a rental, just saying right there, because if it's not always put on there if the property is rented or not, it should be, but you come in, there's a tenant, prorations, who handles that? So
yeah, and we ask that in the start in here email, when that goes out, we do ask if it's a rental, how much the rents are. Are they handled within escrow? Are they not?
Well, I think we should star that more, because sometimes I'll get from escrow, I didn't know it was a rental. And so we're trying to figure it out. So somehow making sure folks do realize that on rental properties. Obviously, if you're selling a 10-unit apartment, you're going to know, there's a bunch of rentals.
We're going to know it's not you don't just live in every single one.
So those are some good tips. So the closing day, or where are we off to here?
Closing day, what's really important on closing day is to make sure to please bring your ID. That's actually the day of signing. Please bring your ID to the signing, because here's the thing. It could be a driver's license. Sometimes they'll ask for 2 different forms of ID. The escrow officer should know if that happens. We take current driver's license, valid passport, a government issued ID card like military ID. That's fine too. The reason why we do that, for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we need to make sure it is you who's signing, but the notary is making sure that is who it is. Also, depositing funds to escrow to close. So that settlement statement that you go over with escrow, they actually will call you in advance and let you know, maybe the day before signing or when they make that appointment with you, how much is needed to bring in to close at that time. And
I like to tell people to maybe even bring a little bit extra, because you guys can't keep any extra money. So if I'm supposed to bring in $15,226, if you make it, round up to that 50, there's a little bit of margin in error in case you're off, and you guys will cut a check back.
Yeah, we could cut a check back. That's not a problem. That's a good way to handle things too, for the just in case, right? Like maybe a utility bill comes in a little higher.
Right.
So typically the day of your signing appointment, if it's not a same day sign-in fund, we would recommend that we get those funds to close. A wire within 24 hours of the transaction closing, of your close date. It can usually be the same day, but just there's wire cutoff times at 2:30.
That's always frustrating.
And sometimes the wire boards are a little bit busy. Cashier's check the day before and before 4:00, because that's when we do our deposits. So say you're closing on a Friday, bring it in Thursday for a cashier's check. And we do not accept personal checks for closing on transactions. Stop pays, a little different.
And I guess somewhat making sure that you're not going to set appointments usually till you have the lender, the loan documents. The sellers really don't have usually loan documents to sign. So kind of 2 different appointments, the buyer side versus the seller side. But it's a cool part where you guys put it all together and work your magic and make everyone happy.
Yeah, definitely. And when we do set those appointments, we know people have to work and everything too. But usually it's pretty time sensitive to when we need to do it. The loan docs usually come right before, within a few days of closing.
Hurry up and wait. I don't know how you guys do it, because they'll get these documents, or we've got to close tomorrow, and they just get them that day, and they have to go through, if you buy a house, it's like 100 pages to sign.
And they don't just hit print either. Like we'll work up the loan documents. We have to make sure everything's accurate.
Right.
And do you have to take special like reading upside down practice for all of the upside down reading
We
you have
don't
to do?
we don't have to take special classes on that. However, we learn to read upside down pretty good. Those escrow girls and guys are very good at reading upside down, and I try to, but sometimes I have to squint to make it work.
I mean, I think it's just communication, I think, is the biggest factor of dealing with escrow, because if you're the buyer or the seller, you want to get to the finish line as quick as possible. So delaying or not telling that you're going to be out of town, or, not letting your broker know or escrow know that there's a change of some sort, whether you got married or not. I mean, I think it's just, these are critical things that can really change anything. And then, like Keith brings up a lot, is you can be out of contract and something can happen to the entire transaction just based on your lack of participation. Absolutely.
Communication is key, and getting documents in on time is key. A lot of the stuff towards the end kind of depends on the lender, and when we get all that stuff in right then and there, we try to make everything work as much as we can.
It kills me when someone misses closing by one day, because it's not always, the sellers don't have to agree or the buyers don't. So there's a lot of pitfalls, I think, is another video. But so I think this video is let's assume everything goes smooth and we're not running into title issues, lender issues, buyer issues, appraisal issues, tenants. There's a lot of issues that can go by or go through. But for the most part, what we like to do is put our trust with you, Chicago Title.
Absolutely.
Using them for years. And I think they do a great job for trying to work through the problems, because it's not uncommon for something to go have a hiccup here, or a little haywire, need some massaging, or to do some extra work. So I think your team there, both on title and on escrow, is top notch.
Every transaction's different, and that's awesome. And we always look forward to working with the clients.
Sure. So appreciate this. If you were just only watching this escrow one, make sure, if you're interested, we had another video all about title. It's right up there. It's equally as exciting as this one. I was a little leery, but equally
as exciting.
All right, thanks. We look forward to your purchase and sale agreements and your title and escrow orders.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for sticking with us. It was a pleasure to have Kristin Hunt with Chicago Title with us. Make sure to watch the rest of our videos, and make sure you like and subscribe.